name of this test is the Woodcock-Johnson 4 Test of Achievement. The authors are Richard Woodcock and Mary E. Bonner Johnson. Current authors are Frederick Schrank, Kevin McGrew, Nancy Mather, and R.W. Woodcock. The publisher is Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, Riverside Publishing, Rolling Meadows, Illinois. The Woodcock-Johnson has been revised several times over the years. The latest edition was published in 2014 and is known as the Woodcock-Johnson 4, or WJ4. The purpose of the Woodcock-Johnson is to test cognitive abilities of students, as well as academic achievement in oral language. The list of subtests to access include letter-word identification, applied problems, spelling, passage comprehension, calculation, writing samples, word attack, oral reading, sentence reading fluency, math facts fluency, writing fluency, reading recall, number matrices, editing, word reading fluency, spelling of sounds, reading itself, social studies, and humanities. The most recent norming happened in 2009, December, and it ended in January of 2012. The norming sample was a 25-month period. Data was collected from 7,416 individuals from geographically diverse communities representing 46 U.S. states and the District of Columbia. The preschool sample was composed of 664 children ages 2 through 5 years who were not enrolled in kindergarten. The kindergarten through 12th grade sample contained 3,891 examinees. The college-university sample was composed of 775 undergraduate and graduate students. The adult sample contained 2,086 examinees. The variables that were considered in the norming sample were census region, which area of the United States, sex, country of birth, race, ethnicity, community type of school that they went to, whether public, private, or home, type of college, educational attainment, employment status. The appropriate age range for taking the Woodcock-Johnson 4 would be depending on the test. The Woodcock-Johnson has an assessment that tests early cognitive and academic development in students aged 2 through 6 and 7 through 11. The regular Woodcock-Johnson assessment is across ages all the way up to age 90. The Woodcock-Johnson 4 aimed to have reliabilities at 0.90 or higher, and the subtest reliabilities at 0.80 or higher. Reliabilities in these tests almost always met this standard, with a couple of exceptions. The median reliability for a picture recognition was 0.74. The median reliability for visual processing is 0.86. Of the 39 median test reliabilities reported, 38 are at 0.80 or higher, and 17 were at 0.90 or higher. In terms of reliability across age groups, the older the group, the higher the reliability there is. For example, those who tested at age 11 scored a median of 0.78, while people tested who were age 50 through 59 scored a median of 0.90. The Woodcock-Johnson 4 says that while there are differences in the reliability scores between these ages, this does not necessarily mean that the test is flawed. It just means that there is more of a difference between each student's ability at age 11 than there is at age 50. My opinion about the validity of this test from what I have learned, is that due to its reliability of 0.80 through 0.90 is that it can be considered a reliable test. As we have learned, the closer to a score of 1.0, the more valid it can be considered. However, as the Woodcock-Johnson 4 manual states, while high reliability does not necessarily imply that a test score is valid for a specific purpose, reliability is an important element of the overall validity argument for a test. I believe that due to the consistent high reliability scores, the test must be valid because the data shows it tests for what it is supposed to. If this assessment is used by many school districts, then that goes to show that the test must have a high degree of reliability and validity. The types of scores that are available through this test instrument include grade equivalence, age equivalence, W-score, relative proficiency indexes, cognitive academic language proficiency levels, percentile ranks, standard and raw scores. There are numerous combinations included in the Woodcock-Johnson 4 that attempt to meet every possible need for students in order to give them the opportunity to succeed. One-on-one testing and the recommendation that the test can be administered in a quiet environment with or without the use of noise-canceling headphones attempts to accommodate students to help them focus. The test itself is in large print, it has fewer items per page, and has extra space between items. This allows for better focus on the items at hand. The Woodcock-Johnson is sensitive to different impairments and allows for the use of visual magnification devices as well as audio presentation. The Woodcock-Johnson 4 clearly mentions that administrators of the assessment have to be mindful of the extent of the modifications given to students, as this could compromise the validity of the test. They recommend that examiners should select and administer tests that do not require modifications, and if modifications need to be given, then the examiner should be trained or consult with a person who is trained prior to administering the test. The test has been adapted to suit students with limited English proficiency. The test also can be administered and given in Spanish. The Woodcock-Johnson 4 recommends that while a test can be accommodated to meet the needs of students with limited English proficiency, the examiners themselves should consult with someone who has knowledge of both the language spoken by the students as well as the student's background. The test itself was reviewed for biases against students with different cultural and ethnic backgrounds, and any questions that were deemed offensive or subjective were taken off the assessment during the most recent revisions. The price of the Woodcock-Johnson is $165.25. The Woodcock-Johnson 4 recommends that the examiners should have knowledge and training of the Woodcock-Johnson 4 ACH administration and scoring procedures. Examiners should also be aware that the test should be administered exactly as directed in order to keep the validity of the assessment intact. The Woodcock-Johnson additionally recommends that anyone who scores and interprets the results have graduate level training in educational assessments. I am not qualified to administer this test, and it seems as though in order to become qualified, I would have to be trained fully in its procedures, as well as become a graduate level student in order to interpret the results. The administration of the test seems pretty straightforward. The test seems to be well designed and somewhat easy to follow. It is typically a staple with many schools and a means of assessment. The scoring and interpretation of the results seems to me to be the most complicated part of this test. The Woodcock-Johnson 4 manual really seems to stress the importance of being well trained and educated in order to be able to make a solid assessment of the results. I understand this is in order to ensure the validity of the test as well as to make a concrete determination of a student's cognitive abilities. The Woodcock-Johnson 4 says it should take approximately 40 minutes to administer the core set of tests. This is with an experienced examiner, so time could possibly vary. I read a review on ERIC, which is the Institute of Educational Services. The review was written by Victor Villarreal. In the article, the author states that the Woodcock-Johnson 4 is a strong test and meets its stated purpose, if used appropriately, and as a complement to other forms of psychological and educational data. It can certainly assist with the diagnosis of specific disabilities and can serve as a general evaluation tool to guide more narrow evaluations that can better inform intervention and educational planning. I believe that his objective review is fairly accurate. This assessment is used often in many schools as a supplement to other tests to diagnose and make determinations. My school uses this assessment regularly when determining progress with students, and it is helpful with intervention and educational planning.